It began with a lawn gnome. Just one. A small, smug-looking gnome with a fishing rod and a cracked red hat sitting at the edge of Karen's immaculately trimmed grass. No one would have cared. Except the HOA had a strict policy about unauthorized decorative items. We all knew the rule: no statues, ornaments, or whimsical displays that distract from neighborhood uniformity. I'd been fined last spring for a simple birdbath. So when Karen installed that gnome, I noticed immediately. At first, I told myself to let it go. Maybe she hadn't read the rules. Maybe she'd take it down. But a week later, the gnome had friends. 5 of them now lined up like a pastel army. One was a pirate. Another was holding a welcome sign shaped like a frog. Every time I walked by with my dog, I could feel my blood pressure rise. So I did what any rule-abiding homeowner would do: I reported it. I filled out the form online, cited Section 4B of the HOA handbook, and attached a photo. Simple, clean, anonymous. That should have been the end of it. 2 days later, Karen marched over, arms crossed, lips pursed. "Did you seriously report my decorations?" she demanded. Her tone carried the confidence of someone who thought rules were optional. "I didn't report you," I said evenly. "I reported the violation." She gave a laugh, sharp and dismissive. "You know, I'm friends with Brad, the HOA president. He says it's fine." That was my first real glimpse into Karen's mindset. She truly believed that connections overruled regulations. "That's nice," I said, meeting her gaze. "But the rules don't care who your friends are." Her jaw dropped slightly, like no one had dared say that to her before. "You'll regret this," she muttered before storming back across the street. Over the next week, I noticed things escalating. The gnome family grew again. 10 of them now, plus a pink flamingo that seemed like an intentional taunt. I caught her smirking from her window one morning as I picked up my mail. Then came the notice, not for her, but for me. A letter from the HOA claiming my trash bins were visible from the street. A violation I'd never received before. The bins had been in the same place for years. I knew instantly what had happened. Karen had called in a favor. It was then I decided, if Karen thought friendship exempted her from the rules, she was about to learn how wrong she was. I started small, discreet. A copy of the HOA charter printed and highlighted, every line about uniformity, maintenance, and decor. I'd spent enough evenings fuming to know the rules better than most. If Karen wanted to weaponize the system, I could do it too, but legally, meticulously. I filed a request to inspect the neighborhood compliance records. HOA bylaws allowed it for transparency. Brad, the president, looked uneasy when I showed up with a clipboard. "It's unusual," he said. "Most people don't ask to see this." "I'm not most people," I replied. What I found was pure gold. Karen had more violations on record than anyone: unpaid fines for late landscaping, unauthorized exterior lighting, even an unapproved patio extension. But none had ever been enforced. Brad had waived them for good standing. Good standing, my foot. That night, I drafted an anonymous letter to the full HOA board, attaching screenshots, receipts, and a polite note citing policy breaches. "Preferential treatment undermines community trust," I wrote. "Rules must apply equally." The next HOA meeting was chaos. Karen showed up in oversized sunglasses, whispering to Brad before it started. When the board treasurer, a quiet woman named Louise, read the letter aloud, the room went still. Brad's face turned the color of an overripe tomato. "Are these accusations true?" Louise asked. Brad stammered something about oversight. Karen glared daggers at me across the table, certain I was behind it. I didn't deny it. I just sipped my water and waited. Afterward, Brad pulled me aside. "You could have come to me," he said, voice tight. "I did," I replied. "Through the proper channels." By the end of that week, the board announced a neighborhood-wide Compliance review. Every property, including Karen's, would be inspected. Fair and square. When the inspectors came, Karen's confidence wavered. I watched from my porch as they measured her patio, photographed her gnomes, and jotted notes about her mailbox. Color being non-standard beige. She tried to charm them, laughing, calling them sweethearts, even offering lemonade. It didn't work. 3 days later, she got the same letter. I had months ago, violation. Notice, non-conforming decorations. For once, the gnomes looked less like a cheerful army and more like evidence. And though she didn't say a word to me for days, I could feel the tension building. I knew this wasn't over. Karen wasn't the type to lose quietly. By autumn, our cul-de-sac felt like a Cold War zone. Neighbors took sides, some thought I was a busybody, others whispered admiration for finally standing up to Karen. The HOA was suddenly stricter than ever. Memos, inspections, and fines became weekly occurrences. Karen tried to strike back. Her new strategy, charm offensive mixed with sabotage. One morning, I woke to find my mailbox tipped over, screws loosened. Another time, someone left a passive-aggressive note on my car windshield. Maybe you should mind your own lawn. I knew who it was, but I didn't react. I just documented everything. Dates, photos, even camera footage from my doorbell. If Karen wanted a battle of endurance, I was prepared. Then came her next move. She ran for the HOA board. At the next meeting, she waltzed in wearing a bright red blazer, smiling like a campaign poster. I just think our HOA needs more compassion, she announced. Someone who understands the spirit of the community, not just the letters of its rules. Several people clapped. I clenched my jaw. When voting day came, I didn't campaign, I investigated. I filed a request with the county records office for her patio permit. As it turned out, she'd never filed one. The unapproved addition had technically invalidated her eligibility for HOA leadership. When I presented the document to the board before the vote, Brad's face fell. We can't ignore that, he muttered. Karen lost by 2 votes. The next morning, I found her in her yard again, glaring across the street. You really think this makes you a hero? She shouted. No, I said calmly. Just consistent. You're pathetic, she spat. Everyone hates you. I shrugged. Maybe. But everyone follows the rules now. She stormed inside, slamming her door so hard it rattled my windows. By winter, the gnomes were gone. The flamingo disappeared. Even the patio furniture vanished. Her yard looked sterile, perfect, and utterly defeated. I should have felt victorious. Instead, the quiet felt heavy. The neighborhood had grown colder, conversations shorter, smiles thinner. Winning had cost something intangible. Still, I told myself it was worth it. Fairness mattered. Or so I thought, until spring arrived. And I found a new violation notice taped to my door. This one wasn't from the HOA. It was signed by Karen herself. The notice was a masterpiece of petty vengeance. Failure to maintain property aesthetics, it read. Citing a few dandelions poking through my driveway. The signature line bore her name, with a new title underneath. Acting Compliance Liaison. Apparently. After Brad resigned under stress, the board had temporarily reinstated Karen to handle compliance tasks. My stomach dropped. She'd found her loophole. Within days, letters started hitting other houses too, minor infractions. All signed by Karen. It wasn't about enforcement. It was about payback. Neighbors who'd once complained about her now avoided eye contact. Afraid of becoming targets. I could have fought her legally, but instead, I decided to do something smarter. I used her own obsession against her. I began hosting rule review sessions on my porch every Saturday. I invited neighbors for coffee and printed copies of the HOA charter. We talked about our rights, transparency, and oversight. Slowly, people started showing up, not out of loyalty to me, but out of exhaustion. Karen's reign of spite had worn them down. Within a month, the group had grown to 15 homeowners. We drafted a petition calling for a vote to dissolve the current board and elect new members. All by the book. All by the rules. When Karen found out, she tried to crash one of our meetings, shouting about illegal assemblies. I handed her a printed clause from the bylaws, stating homeowners could organize freely to propose amendments. Her face turned crimson. "You can't win," she hissed. "I already did," I said quietly. "Because the rules don't care who you know, they care what's written." The vote took place on a humid May evening. 70% turnout. The motion passed. Karen was officially removed from any HOA role. She moved out by summer, selling her house below market value to get away from tyrants, as she told anyone who'd listen. The gnomes went with her. Months later, I walked past her empty yard, now quiet and ordinary. The grass grew uneven in places, but I didn't mind. For once, the neighborhood felt peaceful. I thought about everything that had happened, the reports, the retaliation, the meetings, and realized something simple: rules weren't about control. They were about fairness, even when fairness feels cold. Karen had believed friendship could rewrite them. I believed they existed to protect us from people like her.